when I say I love the creativity of it, it's not just making the beer, but once you have that, you have the names, you have the branding, you have the packaging.
Yeah.
We can be pretty zany when it comes to social. Like, we can have a lot of fun with every aspect of this industry. There is something romantic about craft beer, and I think a lot of industries are the same way. It's just knowing that it's being made by individuals and that money's going right to those people.
And I think people care about the story. And that's part of why I'm sitting down here with you, is that, I get to talk to you. I didn't have to go through a PR firm.
Right. Yeah. Nowadays, you go to school for brewing, but that wasn't a thing in the past, So we all had previous lives, previous things, and what got us into this is we all just loved making beer and drinking craft beer.
I'm Alan Cogan. Join me as I highlight small businesses with interviews on site at distilleries, breweries, and more. My mission is to share the stories of the awesome people behind the craft. Welcome to Crafted Conversations. All right, well, Grant, we're here in Sheboygan at Sheeps Brewing. I've been here quite a bit for bachelor parties. I mean, you have an awesome space here in the Taproom, and your beer's always been delicious.
Well, thank you.
But thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. We always love talking about beer. I'm in the right industry. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, full disclosure, I'm primarily a spirits guy. I was a beer guy in college. All the craft beers, of course, 30 Rex Miller Lite. But my stomach kind of did some flipping, and I found whiskey, and I that was my calling. And I still love my spirits, but I've since gravitated more back towards the craft industry and all the awesome offerings that beer has to offer, and the occasional Miller Lite when I'm watching a baseball game because it's nostalgic.
Of course.
But since doing this show and coming to talk to people like you who have a craft brewery, it's really cool to see the awesome TLC being put into craft and all the awesome things you can do.
It is fun. I mean, this industry it's really cool being involved in it for the last 12 years because it's grown so much and changed so much, and but it still feels very authentic. The people that got into it are the ones who are passionate about what they're doing, and they're making something that they really love. And I think that makes such a big difference when it comes to an industry and a business. Is you're not just making a widget; you're making something that you truly love. And yeah, it's a great industry.
Yeah. Well, tell me how you got into it.
Well, before this, I was pouring concrete at a family business. We made the precast structures that get buried underground, and I was third generation. My dad loved it. My grandpa loved it, and I didn't. I love the small business side of it. Getting to be involved with everything, the engineering, the sales, the actual manufacturing, working hard and having a tangible product at the end of the day is something that I still value and love doing. But, it was concrete. It didn't have the creativity to it. It didn't hit the things that I really wanted out of what I was going to do for the rest of my life. So, once I got the courage to tell Dad that I wasn't sticking around, he was a good dad first, like just making sure I wasn't making a terrible life choice. I decided I was going to leave, and I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. The brewery was a fanciful idea that I felt almost selfish even voicing to my wife because, hey, darling, I'm going to quit our good life's job and start a brewery. So we were kind of looking around, figuring out what things would be, and she finally said, hey, have you ever thought about a brewery? I'm like, well, of course I have, but let's do this thing. And so that kind of gave the green light. We looked at it, and it's one of those stories where, for me, it was better to be lucky than good. A brew up in our town that we used to enjoy, unfortunately didn't make it. And we were able to kind of take over that equipment. It was a lower risk. We just bought the stainless. Someone else actually ran the bar and owned the building.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't have a tap room for the first 5 years. We were just a manufacturing brewery. So found a bank that was willing to give us a chance, and away we went.
Awesome. Are you born and raised Wisconsin?
I am. Yep. From Manitowoc originally.
Manitowoc. Awesome. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. The national people here will know that as Steve Avery.
And I get that. I was up in Canada for a business trip and went to the car rental place, and someone looked at my license. I saw it was from Sheboygan. Like, hey, have you been to Manitowoc? And I said, yeah, I was actually from there. And we went to school with the Averys. And this lady, it was great. There was no one there. It was so early in the morning. She goes, Vern, get out here. And the other person came out there because they were so into the show. And I got a free upgrade out of it. It was great.
Well, there you go.
It worked out well. But everyone knows Manitowoc.
I was born and raised in West Allis. But everyone I tell outside of the state of Wisconsin, I just say Milwaukee because no one knows what West Allis is. Once in a while, I'll drop it. And I'm like, we're known for like two things: the birthplace of Liberace and Jeffrey Dahmer killed 3 people.
Yep.
That's like that great. His grandmother's house was down the road from my house. So it's just
Yeah, you know exactly.
we can commiserate over. But I mean, how prideful it must be for you to be a Wisconsinite, to be able to open and run a business in a local community.
It's so much fun. It is. I think like a lot of us youngsters, we were growing up like, we want to get out of Dodge and you don't appreciate it necessarily. And, went to college, left Wisconsin, and then just realized like it is such a great state. Having the lake right here, everything that goes with it, the people, everyone, it's an awesome state. So yes, being able to make our product here, grow as much as we are, and just supply this group with beer for any occasion, and it's very cool. We don't take it for granted yet.
No, and I love visiting too. I did move away. I got some job offers and moved to the East Coast, and now I bought a house. But I come back all the time because summers in Wisconsin are unbeatable.
Oh, I live for these 6 weeks. It's just we covet them.
Yep. Yeah. 6 weeks. It's a roller coaster of emotions when it comes to fall and summer and spring in Wisconsin.
It is, but having the season is great. I do love it. I think you appreciate summer so much more.
Yes.
Bearing through winter. And also the first nice day of spring is when I always go to the DMV because everyone is happy. It's like the most pleasant day to be at the DMV and all that stuff, you get out of the way. So yes, it's there's perks.
Yeah, absolutely. So were you always a beer guy, or how did you come up with a brewery? How did that genesis?
I was. College, high life was my jam. And it wasn't until really after college that I started to get into craft. But right after college, my wife, girlfriend at the time, she bought me a homebrew kit. And, it didn't even dawn on me to try making beer, and made a brown ale.
Sure.
And thankfully, it wasn't terrible, and kind of kept going on that journey and really started getting into homebrewing.
Sure.
And then, of course, grabbing craft beers out of the store and, following and, chasing KBS when it first came out. All these things before we were even a thing.
Right.
I really got into it. I loved it. We enjoy all spirits. I love, Friday nights we'll often crack a bottle of wine and just kind of something different. Bourbon as well. I love Scotch. Yeah. So yes, I like all the flavored alcohols, but no, there's just something about beer and the world we have for creating it, and just how many different malts there are, and how many hops and yeast, and all the fermentation temperatures, and everything you can do to tweak something, and just from nuanced small changes to these grandiose, huge ways to influence what someone's going to experience. It's a really cool and creative food that we get to make on a daily basis. Yeah.
And I think one of the best parts too of your industry, especially is you're the owner operator. You can kind of do what you want. You can experiment. You can play around. You have ideas. You can come up with things.
Well, and our whole team. We all nowadays you go to school for brewing, but that wasn't a thing in the past. So we all had previous lives, previous things, and what got us into this is we all just loved making beer and drinking craft beer. And our team's really creative. So anytime someone has an idea for, hey, let's try this, they'll put together a recipe. We'll always brew it once on our pilot system. We have a nice little small system where we can make 60 gallons versus the 1,000 gallons that we're making on the big. So. We don't mind making mistakes and dumping stuff, and it's just kind of fun, and it's always educational. But yeah, I'll try throwing stuff out there and seeing what sticks and what we love. And it's really what developed all of the lagers that we do now. Kind of just came from our team. Like, we don't have enough lagers on tap. Let's really get into it. And the world of lagers is just expansive. We pretty much always have a lager or two fermenting on our pilot system, and that's what most of us tend to drink as our shift beer after work. It's just.
That's cool.
It's fun to get to make what we want to drink on that scale. Yeah.
How much of it was a learned process of the balance of that experimentation, making what you want to make, but also having to, fill the cash register and what people, the public want to drink?
Oh, big time. It took a while, I think, to get that balance right for us. Early on, I think like a lot of us, I was very passionate about making beer that, I really liked and I thought was great. And yeah, that shifted for us. I don't think we went over as extreme as some breweries did, but, it shifted because really, we want to make the beer that Wisconsin's going to drink. And that's really our, now internally our motto is, Three Streets Brewing, what Wisconsin drinks. Like that drives every decision we make because we want to be there for every occasion. We want to be there for barbecues, for anniversaries, for commiserations, whatever it is, tailgating. Right. And that, as much as that like narrows our focus, it also widens it because it means like, where are our holes? What are we missing in this whole thing? And it kind of forced us not forced us, but like let us kind of go down two different paths. We have our distribution beers, which we want to be appealing. We want to be open and everyone, something for everybody on that scale. And then we have our Taproom where we get to be that experiment and we try to bring things that people might not be able to get in Sheboygan.
Right.
We love making Belgian beers. We love doing some sours. We love doing our barrel aged. All those things that don't necessarily work on the distribution side work really well here. So people can come in and experience 26 different beers and hopefully, find something new that they didn't know that they liked. And that's kind of the goal. Yeah.
Was there anything surprising that in the market that you're like, you never thought that it would sell well, but it is?
If you would have asked me 12 years ago, if on our 12th anniversary, we would launch a cream ale as a year-round beer, I would have said you were crazy.
Yeah.
But it stemmed from this whole like brewing what Wisconsin drinks, because we were looking at our portfolio and realized a lot of people who, especially accountants, they either bring our Pilsner, which craft Pilsners in Wisconsin are finally starting to take off, but it took a long time because it's just an interesting market of, you're drinking that style and necessarily do you want to do a budget-friendly offering, or if you're going to pay the money, do you want to do something even bigger? So that was always an interesting one for us. So we realized a lot of people were getting our amber ale because ambers in Wisconsin are still big.
Yep.
But the gap between Pilsner and amber is pretty wide when it comes to consumer preference. We're like, we don't have anything right in the middle there.
Sure.
So we were playing around with a lot of different beers, and the cream ale was actually one that our packaging team, we like to try to get our teams to rotate to pick a style and come up with some beers and get everyone involved in the recipe writing process. We did a couple years ago called Grand Theft Lawnmower, and it went over really well. People loved it. Like, hey, I think we have this thing just waiting here for us. So we brewed it a couple times more, had in the tap room. People just really got into it and realized, hey, this should be part of our beer. If we want to make what Wisconsin drinks, like we need to have this kind of beer in our portfolio. And it's done gangbusters. It's called Wisconsinitis, really leaning into, we're all addicted to Wisconsin. We've all caught it. And I think it just plays really well from the beer, what we're presenting with the beer, and also the kind of the brand around it of, this beer's for Wisconsin.
It's one of the things I love about craft beer as I'm learning more and more about the market shifting from my primary love has been Scotch and bourbon. But that's much more of an eloquent nose in the air type of like branding.
Sure.
You can't really have much fun with the naming conventions. Beer, the creativity around the labels and the naming, oh my God, I love it.
Correct. I mean, that's where, when I say I love the creativity of it, it's not just making the beer, but once you have that, you have the names, you have the branding, you have the packaging.
Yeah.
We can be pretty zany when it comes to social. Like we can have a lot of fun with every aspect of this industry. It's really cool, with concrete. And we used to bury the stuff, and you hope you never saw it, because if you did, that means there was something wrong with it. And here we get to we make this product, and then you get to watch people enjoy it and join them in it. It's it's a blast.
I mean, we're sitting here in a pretty massive tap room, and I've seen this place just packed, and which is awesome for you, right, as a business owner. But how would you ever see yourself getting to this point? And what would that scalability look like when you first started?
I don't think I ever. It almost felt like arrogant to think that we could ever kind of get to this level,
Sure.
Be the fourth largest craft brewery in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
No, no, never, but it's really fun. Again, it's a combination of, being lucky and then taking advantage of that luck and executing on it. This tap room, there aren't spaces like this in Sheboygan.
No.
Our production facility is 30,000 square feet. And the big thing with industrial spaces, there's not a lot of tall buildings. So for us, when we're trying to figure out what are we going to do next, there wasn't a space in Sheboygan that was available that we could actually put fermenters in. So it was going to be either we need to look at building something, which is incredibly cash intensive and would have been a tough one to do, doing some contract brewing at somewhere else, which I really didn't want to do because we love the authenticity of making our own beer, or we didn't know. And then all of a sudden, Coca-Cola left Sheboygan.
That's right.
They consolidated their plants, so they're up in Green Bay, now in Milwaukee, and the space became vacant, and an opportunity arose. So we picked up a great manufacturing plant because also they used to make the syrups over there, so the floors were sloped and drained. Like it was really set up well for a liquid operation. And then this other building was just where they pull all the vans in every night to load them up to deliver every day. It was a complete blank canvas of 10,000 square feet that we were able to make our own and turn into our tap room. So yes, it was a perfect opportunity that we were able to jump on, and our bank was awesome. The city helped us out too. They gave us a loan as like a tertiary position to help kind of with that down payment side of things.
Yep.
And everyone really came together to help us succeed with this opportunity in this space. And thankfully it's worked out well.
It's always good to hear too. It's one of my questions that, if you don't answer before I ask it, is how did the city respond? Because the community around craft has been so good, especially in the last 20 years as it's boomed, that, you're a local business and you're bringing in revenue to the area. And it's so awesome to hear that the city of Sheboygan was like, hell yeah, let's do it.
From day one, they have been so great to work with. There's having our own space, you realize all the rules are in place, and they're there for a reason because someone was naughty and they had to put these rules in place because they just pushed things too far.
We're all humans.
But they've been so good with helping us navigate everything and just huge cheerleaders for us. And it goes beyond the city, the whole town, and all the people here. When we first opened up those first bars and restaurants, bringing our beer and taste unhad because they wanted to help us succeed, which gave us money so we could buy grain for the next batches. And from day one, everyone here has been hugely supportive of us, and it's just fun. And now where we are, it's kind of nice because we've hit a point where I think now we can start. We've always tried to give back as best of our abilities, but like now we really can do so much more for Sheboygan as well. And one of our favorite things are just our Sunday fundraisers. The last 2 Sundays, we've had 2 different groups in. Million Dreams, which is a 24-hour daycare, which didn't exist in Sheboygan, and they subsidized rates for folk. They had a huge carnival here.
Yep.
It was bonkers. They raised so much money that day. And then just this past Sunday, Humane Society came in. They put on a doggy Olympics. There was dog making toy areas for for kids to do, and they just put on a really good show. And they raised a crazy amount of money. And it's really fun when we can do that. We donate $1 for every beer goes to them for that day, and just seeing how one is almost like leading to the other, which leads to the other, which leads to the other. It's just it's great. Yeah.
Well, I do have to, because you said A Million Dreams, and I have to give a shout out. So Angel Berry is my wife's aunt.
Oh, no way.
So she's family.
Okay, so you know it very well.
I know her and Matt Berry very well.
What they've done there is just unbelievable.
I know. I toured the space when they had just bought it. And they're doing so well. Yeah. She's kicking ass. Yeah. I mean, I love to see it. And Sheboygan's been awesome with them. So I'm glad they're working with you guys too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, once we met with them before they opened, and I think we did a little something then, but we kind of wanted, they got rolling. And once they got rolling, I mean, they just went from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
And now seeing what they're up to, like, you get one of our months. We do a charity a month. Like, they're one of our charities that we focus on for the entire month and give money to. And but it's just good people doing awesome things that, they could be elsewhere making probably way more money, and that's not their priority. And we just love being able to support them doing something that they're so passionate about.
Yeah. I love that. And again, it speaks to the community. It speaks to the pride of being from, the state at least. But it's, every time I talk to someone in craft, obviously it's kind of a juggling act of, we have to pay the bills, right? But also you have so much room to grow because people want more of these around, and you're not really fighting with the guys down the street. Right. I mean, how many craft brewers do you know who are supportive of what you do and you're supportive of what they do? It's much more of a friendship than it is a Miller versus Liney's.
Anello from Central Waters put it best early in our career. Every brewery has been helpful to each other. Like, it's really cool to see. We had an old at our old place. We had this bottling line was old. The labeler was from the 70s.
Oh wow!
All cast iron, mechanical. I mean, it was impressive, but I was not prepared to operate this thing. And they ran the same line, and I just called them up and said, "Hey, any advice?" And an hour later, his maintenance tech called me up. Spent an hour on the phone with me, sent their entire PM that they had to create because those don't exist anymore for that machine.
Sure.
Or I'm like, and this is still when I'm kind of still fresh out of concrete where like everyone hates everybody. Every little edge you can get is just there. I'm like, I felt guilty.
Right.
I know, like, this is cool. Did you know your guy was doing this? Like, I just want to make sure I wasn't over, stepping on anyone's toes. He goes, oh yeah, man. Like, all we're trying to do is grab one more person from macro, because when they switched over from a buttermill or the drink craft, we're all going to get a pint. So right now our goal is just to make sure that every brewery in the state is making good beer so that person doesn't have a pint that's bad and then doesn't come back for a while.
Right.
Like, that is such a great, healthy way to look at it. And we've had similar situations with a lot of breweries, Lakefront, New Glarus, Deb. We shared a bank. Here I'm nobody. And banker says, hey, if you could talk to Deb, Carey, would you want to? I'm like, well, of course. There's no way. 2 days later, I get a call. Hey, Grant, this is Deb. I got about 45 minutes. Ask away. I was not prepared. Like, wow. It was awesome. And we talked through the distribution side, like beer making. I thought I had a handle on manufacturing, but she walked through the other side of craft. And I'm like, wow, you had no need to call me, but just felt it important. And yeah, it's a great industry. I value that.
I think in craft, the old adage of rising tides lifts all boats is more than true.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and New Glarus is funny. So I live on the East Coast, and I used to have a drug deal with my father-in-law. I would bring him Yingling, and he would bring me Spotted Cow.
Yep. Yeah, we hear that a lot. Yep.
When you started, was there a beer that you set out to make? Like, this is your baby. This is what I want to be known for, or?
Our goal early on was we wanted to make the styles that people wanted to drink, but get there a little different way.
Okay.
So like our Amber Ale, Rebel Kent, it's been with us for 12 years. It grows every year. It's great. I love it. Its base is actually a Belgian heavy single. that then was modified with a little bit of rye malt, so to pull back on the Belgian sweetness. And, it was a very different path to get there. That makes a really clean, sweet but not caramely sweet experience. So those who are trying to just have that football beer can do so in a way that we think lets you kind of enjoy it more and for longer than a lot of the ambers that are, very kind of caramely and over the top.
Right.
That was our goal with a lot of our beers. Our dark beer, we didn't do a stout or porter. Also, you had Mud Puppy, which is Central Water's biggest beer. And like, why would we try to do another one just like that? So we did a black wheat. Bad Boy was our first dark beer that was with us for about, I think, 5 or 6 years. It was great. It kind of hit all those things you wanted with a dark beer, roasty, a little chocolatey, little coffee notes to it, but a little lighter base to it so that you could still have a few of them, enjoy them, and just have it be with what you're trying to do. So I think more so than trying to find one style that we wanted to excel at, we wanted to really make them all because we wanted to have that beer for everybody in this state. And one thing that's important for us is from early on, kind of came up with this thing called the 3-pint drinkability test, and that became it's still a huge part of what we do when it comes to any kind of year-round beers or things that we want to have on the regular. Because if you can't have 3 pints of it and still enjoy it like you did that first sip, it doesn't really fit with what we're trying to do. Because if a beer has too much flavor, it kind of gets overwhelming or too over the top. If it's too soft and light, you kind of get bored with it because it feels watered down. Like, our goal with all of our year-round beers and seasonals is to make sure that you're still going to enjoy it 3 pints later. Should you necessarily? Maybe not. But having the ability to do so is kind of a big part of what we want, because it means that we can be there with you as you just kind of can enjoy your afternoon and day.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make everything. Early on, I did not want to do lagers. I'd say that was the one we focused on ales for a long time.
Sure.
A couple of reasons why. Lagers, we only had 3 fermenters when we first started. In our old space, we only had 6, and we were putting out over 4,000 barrels on 6 30-barrel fermenters, which still gives me nightmares thinking back to those days. And we couldn't lager. Taking up tank space for 8 weeks, which is still a fast lager, just didn't work. When we moved in here, we were finally able to open that door to that world. And man, I mean, adding that was really nice. I think that's really where a lot of our passion is these days. But yeah, no, we really wanted to just make it all.
I love that. And the more I've talked to brewmasters or brewers who are coming up in the industry, they love the challenge of making a good lager. Mm-hmm. But also now sours creeping in to be the big guy, because people who aren't beer drinkers like sours. Right. How have you played with that? Because sours kind of a different story.
It is. When we first opened up this space, we actually had, where we're sitting right now was our kind of soury. We'd bring wort over. We'd inoculate it over here. Okay. Because we wanted to keep them separate. Because, for us, a big part of our brewery is our barrel aging program. The idea of having bugs on purpose in that same building to infect, our 800 to 1,000 barrels at any one time, is just, we just can't do it. It's just terrifying. So we did this for a little while here, and then we needed space. We kind of turned that back into the taproom and stopped doing the sour. So now, right now, we'll do kettle sours. Okay. We really like those, where we'll inoculate it in the kettle, leave it for 72 hours. It'll have that really nice, good kind of Sour Patch taste to it. Yeah. And then we'll boil it to kill any bugs that are in there. That's as far as we can go right now in our building. Down the road, I would love to have a separate space where we could, let some stuff age. Get some fooders out there, even a cool ship. All those things would be really, really fun. But unfortunately, they're a bit down the list for us at this point. Yeah.
I guess I'm always curious about how you're able to balance what you have on tap, because a lot of breweries do it's a revolving door. You have your couple that everyone wants all the time. Mm-hmm. What's the calculus there? Is it just kind of a feeling thermometer or seasonal, or how does that all?
For us, it was more of we just need to add more lines. We started with 16 thinking that'd be enough.
All at all
that's not enough. All right, we need 5 more. So we added another 5, and then quickly thereafter we added another 5. So we have 26 lines of our beer, which is it. I think it makes it easier because we really just naturally, we have all styles. We always try to pay attention, making sure that we're not getting too IPA heavy, too lager heavy, too this, that, or the other thing. So we're looking at it, but it makes it a lot easier when you have this many lines, because you can just kind of keep brewing that pilot system. Our team loves doing so. We probably brew on there twice a week, sometimes more depending on the season and how busy we are. But brewing that much for the tap room lets us just have a whole lot of variety.
That's a good answer. Let's just add more lines.
Add more lines.
Is there anything that you have yet to do that you really want to, that you haven't had the resource or time or capacity to do yet?
Oh, that's interesting. Not really. We talked about sours, and I would love to be able to get a little more geeky into that. And it's a whole different mindset on how you produce those things and how you take care of them and treat them. But I think the big one for me, I love Belgian beers.
Sure.
They're, they're so romantic. Looking back at, the monks who were brewing them forever, and, your singles, doubles, triples, and the stories that go beyond them, and the quads, and how it's royalty and for wedding, and the different styles, and how they consume beer and how they produce beer. It's my favorite culture when it comes to old school beer production, and making them are just a blast. The yeast strains and letting them go wild and controlling the temperatures and changing the flavor profiles, and they're just so clean and big, and they're awesome. But I've learned that we can only make so many because only so many people actually like drinking them. So
right.
That's for us. Then it's a great way on our pilot system where we can have put out 3 half barrels, 4 half barrels of it. People will drink it, it'll go. But anything in package, I've learned my lesson. Doesn't quite get the love that I wish it would. But
I love my Belgian doubles.
Oh, I
love them.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that history too. I mean, also we're in Wisconsin, a lot of German heritage.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of neat that we have. I don't know what the stats are, but how many bars per capita? And
we're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
We're doing all right for ourselves here.
Are you guys in distribution throughout Wisconsin, or how does that all work?
Yep. We have the entire state of Wisconsin.
Okay.
So you can find us from Hudson down to Kenosha and everywhere in between. And then we have a few counties in Minnesota that touch Wisconsin.
Okay.
But that's about it right now.
Yeah. Is there? I mean, I know it's an old adage to not overstretch when you're a small business. Do you have ideations of down the road, or like that's ramp things up?
Yeah. We talk with distributors all the time, and there's we were in Illinois before COVID, and then COVID hit, and we pulled the rep back up to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I mean, Chicagoland itself has, when we opened up, like, we were considered local because there were like 4 breweries in Chicago. Peace, Half Acre, Revolution, Goose, of course.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting one, but anyway, now it's a line of 268 breweries. Last I heard, I count. So, and during COVID, everyone was so awesomely supportive of buying local. Same up here. We lived off of our local community kind of coming in, helping us out. That after COVID, that mentality really kind of stayed there. That we haven't felt the need to go back into Illinois yet. But yeah, we talk all the time. There's so much good craft beer out there that you really have to. There has to be a great reason and pull for someone to want to buy a beer from another state. Because as much as I think Chaos Pattern's a great hazy, there are a lot of great hazies out there. So why is someone in South Dakota going to grab Chaos Pattern versus one that's made in that town or down the road? And I hope to keep expanding as we go. And I think as people's priorities and how they drink craft and purchase craft change, I think we'll have opportunities because we have the ability, we have the capacity right now to do so. But we just want to make sure that it's a smart choice and we're not opening a market that 2 years later we're going to say it wasn't worth it for us. 'Cause that also doesn't feel earnest to those who then do support us and buy our beer and accounts that bring us in and all the rest of that. We want to make sure if we're going in, it's going to be a good thing for us and all of our partners in that state.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure choosing what beers go into what market probably is a bit of that calculus too.
Oh, exactly.
I mean, I do think too that the perception of the market has changed quite a bit within craft of all. I mean, just in general, for anything local is much more appealing to someone who lives in the area. But even I'll even say in other states, if you find something that's like locally made in Wisconsin, locally made in North Dakota, or something like that, that's kind of interesting. I want to try that.
Big time.
Bigger than like the big corporate machines that are
100%.
everywhere.
I think people still really appreciate a product made from a small place where it's everything, all of our valves we're still turning manually.
Right.
It's there is something. It's something romantic about craft beer, and I think a lot of industries are the same way. It's just knowing that it's being made by individuals and that money's going right to those people. It's special. I think people do care about that.
Hey y'all, Alan Cogan here with Crafted Conversations. If you want to support the show and the mission of sharing the stories of craft, head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedconvos. I'd really appreciate throwing a couple bucks my way to help me pay for travel, the equipment that I use, the time that I spend editing, all the software that I use. I really appreciate any support you can give me. And if you can't afford a couple bucks, at least give me some feedback or go over to your YouTube and subscribe or follow us on Spotify. Anything helps to make sure that we share the story of craft and give these small business owners a little limelight and get them out on a platform that really showcases what they're doing. I can't do this without you guys or your support, so I would really appreciate you pitching in and helping out. So I'll see you out there, and I really appreciate it. Cheers.
And I think people care about the story. And that's
Right.
part of why I'm sitting down here with you, is that, you know, I get to talk to you. I didn't have to go through a PR firm.
Right.
Maybe you have one, I don't know. But I can get to hear your story, and whether it makes a beer taste better or not for me, it's kind of a cool showcase of your family story, that you got to this point, started a small business, and it's like, yeah, I like that. That's awesome.
Right.
It's prideful. I don't know. I think the market's changing to really embrace people like you, which is great. And I'm wondering what craft looks like in the next 10 years.
Oh man, we were just having that conversation yesterday with our team. You know, it's amazing because of grocery store commitments and things like that.
Yeah.
That I'm already putting together our 2025 calendar.
Oh, sure.
Of at least, you know, that side of the releases, and having to figure out what's going to be the thing and what does beer look like. And man, I don't know. These last 12 years have been fascinating. You know, when we first came out with water slides, a lot of Wisconsin deemed to be too hoppy.
Oh, really?
We haven't changed it in 12 years. And now
Okay.
a lot of people consider it to be too malty. You know, and it's just that changed perception and flavor and what people are looking for. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
To see, you know, the swivel from, you know, good regular IPAs to the West Coast, which, you know, by today's standards, what we call West Coast now aren't anywhere near what they were back
Right.
then, with those bittering units just going through the roof. And,
Right.
all the way to like the super sweet, you know, then you have the hazies and everything in between. And yeah, my gut and what we're banking on is just, I think people are going to get back to drinkable beer. You know, things that you can have, again, a few of things that are easier on the palate. You know, something that's kind of a part of what you're up to and doesn't necessarily have to be the focus. You know, we've even noticed that it's with our barrel aging beers that people are, where they used to, you know, they'd buy 4, 5, 6 of them. You know, now they tend to be like, they're buying 2. They're buying 1 to drink right now and 1 to cellar, and then they're taking the rest of that and they're buying other things. They're buying the variety packs. They're buying the, you know, the ambers, the IPAs, things like that. Yeah, it's an interesting shift. I think people also appreciate, because COVID was such a long amount of time and you weren't going out as much, and you realize how much more money you had in your pocket by not doing so, and you already made those great, you know, awesome backyards and bars down in your basement. I think it's shifting to how people are choosing to spend their money and realizing that they like having this cash that's maybe not going towards, you know, a $22 4-pack or things like that. You know, I think everyone's being a little smarter with, not smarter, just they're reallocating their priorities on how they're spending their money.
Yeah.
And that's influencing what they're buying, because then, yeah, a 6-pack of a nice beer garden Pilsner for $10 is a pretty good value compared to something else that you may have bought before.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I like IPAs, because it's better bang for your buck.
Exactly.
Right. Get me there faster. No, drink responsibly. One of the mythos I always love to break with brewers and breweries is that you guys are here doing hard work. You guys are making a product and you care about it. A lot of TLC, blood, sweat, and tears. You're not just out here drinking and getting hammered.
Correct.
I mean, you are sampling your product, but you're not just.
Oh no. Yeah. It's yes. I mean,
A lot of people think that, oh, what a great job. You're just drinking beer all day.
right. No, we try not to. Or the days where
We try not to.
well, no. I mean, generally speaking, you know, in the mornings I'll usually have a few barrel aged beers waiting for me that we pull from the barrels to sample
Sure.
and see what we wanted to do in that direction. But really, no one touches alcohol until you're done with your equipment, you're done with your chemicals. You know, using caustic and acids, you know, for our cleaning cycles are they're dangerous. And yeah, we don't want anyone under the influence. You know, there's days where we have to, like Wolf Day. You know, we could process 120 barrels, and every barrel has to be sampled. Those individuals sampling those barrels are on pretty strict rules after that you're not jumping on a forklift, you're not doing anything else. You know, we got pizza in the lunchroom.
Yeah.
Go eat some and just, you know, take a break, because even if you're just sipping, you know, that half an ounce to make sure that barrel is where we want it to be, you do that 100 times and that adds up.
Yeah.
But that's once a year.
Sure.
The rest of the year, no. It's you know, we love coming over after work for, you know, a shift beer, enjoying it, putting our feet up, you know, things like that. But no, really the only beer we tend to drink at the brewery is beer that's in fermentation. That beer's not very tasty. You know, you take those, just make sure that it's going as it should be in tracking. You know, once a beer actually tastes good, then we stop drinking it, because then we can sell it. So, you know, we wait till it gets into package and cans, and then, you know, come over here afterwards. Yeah.
What's your go-to shift beer, after shift beer?
Lately, it's been all of our pilot lagers.
Okay.
We have 2 on tap right now that are just phenomenal. One uses a bunch of New Zealand hops in there, so kind of that New Zealand Pilsner style, and we've really been enjoying that. We've been upping the bitterness on it, so it's a little bit more crisp as well, and it presents so nicely. It's like 4.5%, so really great one to refresh before going home. And yeah, I've been leaning towards those lately.
Very cool. Yeah, I one of the things I think is interesting too is the challenge of lagers and all those things. I've heard that the hardest beer to make, and you can speak to this, is a Pilsner because it shows the most impurities if you get it wrong. Is that true?
I used to say the exact same line and believe in that sentiment, and I think the difference is it's a lot easier to make lagers with better equipment. I think ales are a little more tolerant of fermentation swings and in the whole process on that, where lagers really do you can really taste the difference with the care that goes into how they ferment out. And I think that's the bigger one, because malts, we can buy great malts, and I think whether you're buying for a lot of our lagers we're using Brice, which is just 30 minutes away from us, and they make all like their Pilsner malt, their Ashburn mild. I mean, they make some really good malt that make great lagers. Or we go down the street to Bort Malt, where they're bagging most of their European malts, which we are, again, very fortunate to be able to just go pick up 3 or 4 bags of a floor malted Weirmann Pilsner malt. The malt, you can get the malt, you can get the strains that we need. I think it's all there, but when you have the tanks that are built for it, that's the bigger difference. And I think a lot of breweries, ourselves included, we just could not do that for a long time.
Sure.
Because it unfortunately, it's one of those things that just fiscally didn't make sense until it could. And,
right.
And did. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to satisfy the whiskey nerd in me.
Yeah.
Barrel aging. Tell me about that. Where are you getting your barrels? How you doing it?
We, being such a large barrel aging brewery now, thankfully we have a lot more buying power than we used to, and also there are a lot more brokers out than when we used to.
Right.
So having access to awesome barrels is becoming more and more possible. Also, you have to kind of get lucky with what they're dumping. We always buy full semi trucks from Kentucky, and this past year we got our semi truck, and they just happened to be dumping 18-year Craig, which they only do once a year, and it was in the window of when we were doing it. So we paid a lot for those barrels, but we were able to get these 18-year Craig barrels in, and my goodness, does the wolf taste good in those things?
I bet.
Also, being able to grab our barrels directly from the source means that usually they've only been dumped 3 or 4 days until they're in our possession.
Oh, sure.
So our infection rate is basically 0. Because the longer that they sit, they dry out, they'll go to a warehouse somewhere else, you're handling a third party. But being able to buy full truckloads has made it a whole lot easier for us to have less loss on our barrels, which then lets us put that money back into the barrels and buy nicer barrels and have more fun with it. So It's been a really nice cycle on that scale. But yeah, we love all sorts of barrel aging. We started off, I think like a lot of breweries, trying to plan out our barrel releases because it's just easier on the schedule. And this year we're going to do a imperial style with coffee, cocoa nibs, and vanilla, and then we're going to do one with toasted coconut, walnuts, that sort of thing. And that's really shifted for us in how we look at our barrel aging program, because the barrels that we're getting now are so phenomenal, and they all present so differently on what's going to come out of it. Because you can have the same, you can have the same whiskey, 2 different spots in the warehouse,
and
it's going to be completely different liquids. And we're noticing that too. So we'll take those same barrels. It'll be same batch of beer, same batch of bourbon, and those barrels are so different that it's changed how we focus on tasting and what we want to do, because we now don't try to force a barrel into a release. We kind of let that barrel tell us, what are you tasting like, and let's enhance those flavors that are already there.
Yeah.
So we had our barley wine aging in some bourbon barrels, and for whatever reason, we found 4 of them that just screamed orange. Like there was orange peel coming off of these things, which isn't in the descriptor for the spirit. It's not a part of it, but it brought out this great flavor. So we ended adding orange peel to it just to bring that out a little bit more. And I think cocoa nib, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Had we tried to schedule that a year ahead of time, we never would have done that. We would have just covered those flavors up. So that's been the biggest change for us. We do a lot of small releases so that we really can dig in and let the barrels tell us what they should taste like. And it's been fun. I think this year we're on track to about 40 different barrel age releases.
Wow.
Which is daunting.
Yeah.
And pretty nuts, but it's also fun. They're smaller batches. People enjoy them. They kind of come in, they go out. We're treating them just like our pilot system or small releases for anything else. And it's cool not to have to put all eggs in one basket for like 3 or 4 big barrel age releases.
Right.
Because people like drinking barrel aged beer year round. You're cracking a 12-ounce can of a barrel aged beer. You can do it on a Thursday. It's just like drinking wine.
Yep.
And that's how we're trying to treat our program. It's like we have able here that you don't need to hoard it. They will always have something fun for you. We always keep 5 or 6 on tap at any one time, so you can come into a full flight of barrel aged beers. We'll always have several in the cooler to take home with you. We're trying to turn barrel aging beer something that it doesn't have to be an experience. It can just be something you enjoy.
Was that a learned thing with how long you wanted to keep it in the barrel?
Big time. Yeah, we've landed on everything's gonna be in there for at least 16 months. You get a full cycle season of change for the liquid to go into the barrel,
Right.
get sucked back out. And yeah, we found like 16 months is when you really start to pick up more than just like, the one or two bourbon notes that are easy. You get into all the wood and the char and everything else that kind of makes a barrel aged beer special.
Right.
Yeah, it takes about that long, and some can be a little faster, some can be longer, depending on what we're trying to do with it. And then different liquids do different things. We're doing a wolf release that's aging in bitters barrels.
Ooh.
We had a really fun project with Bitter Cube, who makes awesome bitters in Wisconsin.
Yes.
We gave them our emptied barrel of triple barrel wolf. They took that and they put bitters in it and aged it for several months. We sell the bitters in our tap room, so it's wolf aged bitters. And then we took the barrel back and we put wolf that was already in a bourbon barrel for about a year into that barrel.
Wow.
And that's coming out this year. And it is so weird and different and just works so well. I mean, you kind of get those flavors like you'd expect from the bitters, but you still get all that like dark bourbon and a little molasses and just some great notes off of it. If we let that go for a year, that thing would be undrinkable. So that was at 4 months. Like, okay, this is about ready to go. We need to pull it out of this barrel so that it's still a well balanced beer. Like all of our beers. We don't want. If you want to drink bourbon, we should drink bourbon. We want it to be beer first with notes of bourbon, not bourbon punch in the face.
Are you controlling the ABV for those barrel ages too, or are you letting it just do what it does in the barrel?
We really don't see fermentation out of the barrel.
Nothing? Okay.
Yeah, we ferment all of our beers all the way through.
Okay.
And then as long as we're doing our job and you're not getting any wild yeast or buggies in there, which we really don't have that sort of contamination.
Right.
The ABV just sticks. You do pick up a little bit from the barrel itself.
Right.
And that's just nature of the beast. But yeah, there's no real fermentation that happens in our barrels at that point.
And that's why I asked. I have heard stories and sometimes happy accidents.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good segue though. Happy accidents. Has there been anything that has popped out that you never expected, but it was like, hey, this is kind of successful?
Oh, I know there has to be.
Or even terrible tragedies. That works too.
Oh, sure. Well, I think just sticking on the barrel train, when we first started going, we were getting bourbon barrels. They were kind of the easiest to source, and we found a source for some rum barrels.
Oh.
So, hey, this is cool. They're going to ship direct from somewhere in Central America.
Yep.
Make their way up. And they got stuck in customs for like 6 weeks. So, they're in some hot warehouse somewhere. By the time they got to us, we had to throw about 70% of them away.
Oh.
And then the rest that we used, half of them became infected because just nature of the beast. They were just so exposed to everything. There was nothing we could do. We tried heat treating them and everything else. So we were left with like 15% of our barrels. And I just wanted to hate that beer so much. And, we just shoot them in the corner, left them there. And, pulled them a year later, and my goodness, was it good. It was such a great beer. Like I was so happy and frustrated at the same time. We didn't even have enough for a release at that point. Like it was just, what are we doing here? So since then we found some better sources for it. So we tried some rum again this year. We had 2 releases this summer, which turned out really nice. But yeah, that was one of the more frustrating ones. But yeah, I think a lot of it is just our team playing around. Some of our team, just unbeknownst to me, they took on our Imperial Stout one year and they just made a homebrew 5-gallon carboy, and they used our Belgian yeast strain instead of our classic ale strain for it, and ended up being called Midnight Bourbon because it was such a great. The Belgian yeast off of that was so cool and fun.
Yeah,
again, a smaller window for people who actually want to drink something like that, but it was just something that just tried. Why not? And it turned out beautifully. And I would say, probably one of the bigger ones on the regular side of things is Armchair Quarterback.
Oh.
So we didn't release it on Oktoberfest until I think our 9th year for a couple of reasons. Sure. One, I was frankly a little scared of it because there's such an iconic style in Wisconsin. Like if we're come out with an O-Fest, it's got to be awesome.
Yep.
And I think it was like a year and a half of R&D on just trying to pick direction. Because O-Fest, in Europe, it's so much, they're a lot cleaner and lighter. Here they tend to be maltier and heavier. And we were trying to find a place where we could live in the middle of those two, where we're still getting people what they want here, but just a little lighter, a little more, not complex is not the right word, but just a different taste profile. And because of that, it was such a wide window of what does this mean? We were just scattershot. We tried some things here, and one of the beers we tried, this is definitely not an Oktoberfest by any stretch of the imagination, but man, that's really good. It was a copper lager.
Oh,
that copper lager has become Armchair Quarterback. So that came out a year, I think, after Oktoberfest. So now by this process of a year and a half of R&D for Oktoberfest, we kind of got 2 of our seasonals out of it, because we go right from O-Fest season to armchair quarterback season, and it worked out really nicely. But that's also kind of akin to us. So, we keep all of our recipes, all of our tasting notes. We have so many different beers. We'll probably overall do about 300 different beers this year. Wow. Taking all those notes that we can, 2 or 3 years later, who knows what might come up.
Yeah.
Because I learned my lesson the hard way. First beer I made on the pilot a long time ago. It's first actually the beer that I took to our distributor, who we were with now, to like, hey, here's what we're up to, here's what we're sending, was this wheat beer, and it was phenomenal. I don't know what I did, because I tried to recreate that beer so many times. I must have either grabbed the wrong malt at the store, or I'm not really sure, but I've never been able to make that beer again. And now it's almost become like this just unicorn in my head. Like, even if I made the same beer again, I would never think that it could be anywhere near as good as the beer I made 13 years ago.
Just on this pedestal.
Correct. Yeah. We made some great wheat beer since, but yeah, it was nice. We learned that lesson early on of just meticulous notes on everything, so that we can pull from all these beers down the road and see what's a winner.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I love hearing all the different stories of experimentation and learning on the way. I mean, I'm sure you're still learning day by day today. I mean, every day's a learning process.
Oh yeah, I mean, we meet weekly for our QA/QC, and like what happened this week, and generally it's nothing, but there's still things that surprise us. Even one thing we learned too is we've been noticing that our hoppy beers were drying out more and taking longer through hop creep, which is just this process where the hops will break down some of the sugars and the yeast can eat them, and you just kind of get this function going on, but it was just taking longer. And we were scratching our heads, and every brewery in the country was dealing with this, and realized one thing we didn't know, and it all came back to how they had changed their processing of the hops. So originally they used to kiln hops a lot warmer, to turn them into, so you get your pellets and kind of process them in that way. They turned down the temperatures because you got more of the original hop flavor out of them. So they were kind of juicier, more bursting with whatever you wanted out of that hop.
Sure.
Unintended consequence, though, was that because they processed them less, they had more of an effect on the beer during fermentation. So by looking at that now, when we go out to Yakima in September every year, we're able to look at the hops that we like and see which ones taste great and what are the kiln temperatures, so we can try to minimize that drying out as much as possible while still picking the best hops. It's just become another thing for us to pay attention to as we're trying to select the best ingredients that we can use that no one really thought about before. And it's just something we all had to learn scattershot, together in this way. So we worked with Breeze Malting, doing a bunch of benchtop trials on what different hops produce different amounts of dry out, and how do we kind of balance that, so that every year when we have our new our new lot selected, we'll see where that goes, and then we have to adjust our recipes based on that to curate the same experience for the customer, even though it got there slightly differently because of the hops.
What a wild thing you would never even think about.
Oh, exactly, and that's where we love the science of this whole industry. There is. Our motto is, it's easy to make a good beer once.
Sure.
Now make it again.
Sure.
And, that's what we focus on every day with our weekly trials. And, we're always sampling beers, older versions of the beer, to see how it's holding up a shelf life, and, how long can we guarantee that this beer is going to taste great.
Right.
And that's, it's just really, really important to our team that, Fresh Coast always tastes like Fresh Coast.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I mean, even for the consumer to hear fermentation is a pretty simple science, but to actually make it taste good and drinkable and sell and consistent, I mean, when you're drinking that beer, you don't think of all the work and TLC that goes into that glass. Right. And that's what I love hearing about it. It's like, wow, it makes me daunting. I don't want to open a brewery now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. There's a lot to it. I mean, yes, there's a lot to it. It's a lot of fun, you know, and, our whole team gets into it. The brewers are calculating, every day how much to use certain things based on the lot numbers of the different ingredients. And we're always looking at when new grain comes in, Breeze makes sure to tell us that this is a new lot from a different field, so we can kind of check things out. And it's fun. It's kind of what energizes us, because we want to make sure that we don't disappoint. If you're a chaos drinker, that beer better taste like chaos every single time, and we are going to make sure that it does. And,
right.
It's fun.
Yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate your enthusiasm too, because I can hear it in your voice and you're animated about your product, right? And this is your baby. And I think it's a pretty awesome showcase of a great small business doing great things in the community. And, especially, I mean, I love that you name dropped my wife's aunt's nonprofit.
I know, small world, huh? Yeah.
Working with different nonprofits for those 12 months. It's awesome. So kudos to what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I appreciate having me here.
Anytime.
But, I'm a customer when I'm in town. I've been to 3 Sheeps, I think at least once for the last 5 times I've visited home.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's a point to come here. I love your beer.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, but Grant, thank you so much.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers.
If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate a follow and share on social media, subscribe to our YouTube, and be sure to give us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Everything you see and hear is out of pocket for us, including travel. If you support our mission of showcasing the amazing stories behind these small businesses, do me a favor and head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedconvos. Buy Me a Coffee is an awesome way to help creators like me with simple one-time donations or a monthly contribution. Every dime goes into giving these breweries, distilleries, and more some much-deserved limelight. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. Cheers!